I want to start today with a question that is probably going to make you a little uncomfortable.
Oh, good. My favorite kind of start.
It's a thought experiment I was playing with while I was reading for this deep dive.
Yeah.
And it really stuck with me.
All righty, let's hear it.
Okay, so imagine we could peel you like an onion.
Mm-hmm.
We start stripping away these layers one by one. If we take away your job title, you're not an accountant or a teacher or a doctor anymore. That's gone.
Okay, a little bit of my identity just vanished.
Right. Then we take away your nationality.
Mm-hmm.
No longer American or Canadian or Japanese. That label is gone too.
Okay.
Then your political affiliation. You're not a liberal, not a conservative. We peel that away. Then we take away your role in your family. You're no longer a mother or a son or a cousin.
Wow, okay. I'm feeling pretty exposed here. This is getting deep fast.
It is. And we keep going. We take away your hobbies. You're not a runner anymore or a gamer or a knitter. All those clubs, all those communities, gone.
So what's left?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? If we stripped away every single group membership, every social label you've ever attached to yourself, what is left in the center?
Huh?
Is there a hard, solid kernel that is the real you?
Yeah.
Or is the onion all there is?
That is the existential dread we are serving up for breakfast today.
It is. Because we all walk around with this incredibly strong conviction that we're the captains of our own ships.
Absolutely, the rugged individual.
We think our choices, who we vote for, what clothes we wear, even the kind of coffee we buy, are pure expressions of our unique, special personality. We say, that's just who I am, right?
That is the classic Western view of the self, the solitary, rational actor making free choices in a vacuum. It's a very powerful mythos.
But the book we are covering today, it basically looks at that idea and says, wrong.
Completely and utterly wrong, yeah.
It argues that a huge, huge portion of what you do, what you say, and even what you believe is your own private, deeply held opinion.
It's actually a script.
A script written by someone else? Or, more accurately, a script written by the groups you happen to belong to at any given moment.
It's a fascinating, if, like you said, a slightly unsettling reality. We're looking at the mechanics of the human mind, but not the mind in isolation. We're looking at the mind as a social processor.
Today, we are deep diving into Social Identifications, the Psychology of Intergroup Relations by Dominic Abrams and Michael A. Hogg.
A title that just rolls off the tongue.
It really does. And I have to be honest with you, when I first saw the cover of this book, I had a flashback to university. This is not one of those airport pop psychology books with a bright yellow cover and a catchy one-word title.
No, absolutely not. This is a heavyweight. This is the real deal.
It's dense. It's academic. It's got charts.
It does, but for good reason. It's considered a foundational work in social psychology. It sits right there on the shelf alongside the legendary work of Henri Tajfel and John Turner, who kind of pioneered this whole field.
So this isn't just some fringe theory.
Oh, no. If you're studying how groups work, whether that's in a sociology PhD program or in high-level organizational management or even in political science, you cannot avoid Abrams and Hogg. It is the core text for understanding conformity, polarization, and really why perfectly reasonable people do some very unreasonable things when they get into a crowd.
And that's our mission today. We are going to try to strip away the academic jargon, and believe me, there is a lot of it, and find the psychological engine they're describing, because I swear, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's the perfect way to frame it, an engine. Because this book explains the motive force behind so much of our social lives. Why do we feel this almost physical need to conform?
Right.
Why do we instinctively favor our people and treat them with suspicion, even when we don't know a thing about them?
And a big one. Why do certain leaders gain this incredible influence while others just flop?
And spoiler alert, the answer isn't just because they have charisma or they're born leaders.
Rarely. It's usually about something much more structural, much more psychological.
Yeah.
So let's set the stage a little more. Usually, when we talk about psychology, we might picture Freud.
Yeah.
Right? We picture digging into your specific childhood, your unique traumas, your individual quirks. We look at the individual.
Abrams and Hogg say that's a fundamental mistake. Not that those things don't matter, but that you're missing the forest for the trees.
How so?
They argue that you cannot understand the individual without understanding the group. They completely shift the lens. Instead of looking at personality traits like being introverted or agreeable or conscientious, they look at social categories.
And they argue those categories, those group memberships,
Are the primary drivers of behavior. often more powerful than your ingrained personality.
Which is a bit of a blow to the ego, isn't it? We like to think character is destiny.
And this research suggests that more often than not, context is destiny.
Okay, let's unpack this. This is a huge idea. The book is really built on two massive pillars. The first one is called social identity theory. Now, identity is a word we throw around constantly. Identity politics, brand identity, finding my identity. How are these guys defining it specifically?
So in their framework, it's actually pretty simple. Social identity theory, or SIT, proposes that a person's self-concept, their answer to the question, who am I, is made up of two distinct parts.
Okay.
One part is your personal identity. These are the things that make you unique. I am tall, I have a weird laugh, I like jazz, the quirks.
The stuff that separates me from you.
Exactly. But the other part, which they argue is often more powerful, is your social identity. This is made up of all the groups you belong to. I am a firefighter. I am a Liverpool supporter. I am a parent.
But we all have dozens of those labels. I'm a podcast host. I'm a runner. I'm from the Midwest. Does that mean I have 50 different personalities rattling around in my head?
In a functional sense, yes. Absolutely. And this is where it gets really, really interesting and where the book just dismantles that Western idea of a single stable self. The key insight, the absolute core of the theory, is that identity is not static. It is radically context dependent. It's fluid.
Explain that. Because I feel like me all the time. I wake up, I'm me. I go to sleep, I'm me.
Okay, think of your mind like a massive mixing board in a recording studio. You've got 100 different faders, 100 different channels, and each one is labeled with one of your social identities.
So as a podcast host, fader, a redder fader.
A brother fader, a neighbor fader, a taxpayer fader, everything. Now, depending on where you are and who you are with, the social context automatically and unconsciously slides some faders up and others down.
Give me a real-world scenario.
All right, think about yourself at Sunday dinner with your grandmother. The smells of her house, the old furniture, her presence, that context grabs the grandson fader and pushes it all the way up to 10.
Okay, yeah.
And in doing so, it pulls the podcast host fader, the cynical Twitter user fader, all the way down to 0. They get muted.
Right. I immediately stop swearing. I eat more politely. I ask about the neighbors. I'm definitely not debating the nuances of social psychology with her.
Exactly. Now, here's the crucial question. Are you faking it in that moment? Are you putting on an act for grandma?
It doesn't feel like it. It feels like I'm just being polite, adapting to the situation.
But the book argues it's much deeper than just adaptation. You aren't consciously putting on a mask. In that moment, psychologically, you are the grandson. That identity has been activated, and it comes with a whole pre-packaged operating system of norms, values, and behaviors.
It's a script.
A script. But if you leave that dinner and go straight to a football stadium with your college buddies,
The mixing board resets instantly.
instantly, the grandson fader plummets, and the rowdy fan fader shoots up to 10. And suddenly, screaming creative abuse at a referee, something the grandson prototype would never, ever do, is not just acceptable. It's required. It's part of the new script.
See, that's the part that trips me up. Because if I can switch from polite grandson to swearing hooligan in the space of 20 minutes, it makes me feel like I have no integrity.
Yeah.
Like I'm just a chameleon with no core.
That's a very common reaction because our culture prizes consistency as a mark of integrity. But Abrams and Hogg would reframe that. They'd say integrity is just consistent adherence to the norms of the currently active group.
So I'm not being fake in the stadium.
You are being a good fan. That's your identity in that moment. You aren't being fake at dinner. You are being a good grandson. The you changes because the reference group, the social context changes.
So the self is less of a solid thing and more of a collection of these scripts that get loaded up depending on the situation.
Largely, yes. And that leads us to the second pillar of the book, which explains the mechanism for how we know which script to load. It's called self-categorization theory.
Self-categorization theory. Sounds a bit like filing paperwork.
That's a perfect analogy. It is a mental filing system. Our brains are categorization machines. They have to be. We would be completely overwhelmed by the complexity of the world if we had to treat every single object and person as a totally unique snowflake. Imagine if you had to inspect every chair you ever saw from scratch to figure out if you could sit on it. You'd never sit down.
Right, you'd be paralyzed. So we see an object, we tag it as chair, and we sit. We have a category for it.
We group chairs, we group trees, we group cars, and crucially, we group people. We are constantly automatically sorting the social world into categories, and the most fundamental sort is us versus them.
But the theory is called self-categorization.
Exactly. Because the most critical step in this whole process is that we categorize ourselves.
We put ourselves into one of the boxes.
We do. And when we categorize ourselves, when that little switch flips in our brain and says, in this situation, I am a member of this group, something profound happens. The book calls it depersonalization.
Now, depersonalization sounds terrifying. It sounds like a sci-fi movie where my personality gets erased and I get replaced by a pod person.
It does sound ominous, and it's an unfortunate choice of words because in clinical psychology, depersonalization is a serious disorder where you feel detached from reality.
Okay, so that's not what we're talking about here.
Not at all. Here in social psychology, it means something very specific and much more common. It means shifting from acting as a unique, idiosyncratic individual to acting as a prototypical group member.
So I become a stereotype of myself.
You become the archetype. The perfect example. Think of a soldier in boot camp or a new employee at a massive orientation for a company like, say, Amazon or Google.
Okay.
When they put on that uniform or that company lanyard, they're undergoing a process of depersonalization. They're being taught to suppress the things that make them unique. Their love of jazz, their weird laugh, their personal political opinions, and to amplify the traits that make them a good member of the group.
So they stop being Steve from Ohio who likes to fish.
Yeah.
And they start becoming a soldier or a ghouler.
Precisely. The I becomes a we.
But why? Why would we want to suppress our uniqueness? We're told from kindergarten, be yourself, you're special.
Because being unique is cognitively expensive and socially risky. Depersonalization offers two huge benefits: clarity and safety.
How so?
When you depersonalize, you don't have to constantly figure out what to do. The group identity gives you the script. The norms tell you how to behave, what to value, even what to think. It's a mental shortcut.
And the safety part?
There is safety in numbers. By acting as a prototypical group member, you become interchangeable. You fit in. You are less likely to be singled out, criticized, or expelled. It's a powerful driver.
I see this at political rallies. You see people who, in their private lives, are probably very nuanced, gentle, thoughtful individuals. But you put them in a crowd of 20,000 people, all wearing the same hat, chanting the same slogan, and they transform.
That is depersonalization in action. In that moment, they are perceiving themselves not as unique individuals, but as interchangeable representatives of the movement.
A sea of faces.
Yes. And this is the crucial point the book makes. When we depersonalize ourselves, we automatically start treating others as categories too.
Right. So in that rally, I'm not yelling at Bob, who has a dog and loves gardening and is worried about his mortgage. I'm yelling at a liberal or a conservative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are interacting with a prototype, not a person. And this explains why discourse breaks down so fast online or in any polarized environment. You aren't talking to a human being with a complex inner life. You're talking to a category, an avatar for an entire group you dislike.
This just challenges that Western view of individualism so hard. We really want to believe we're making our own choices. But if I'm in what you're calling depersonalized mode, say at that rally, I'm not really thinking my own thoughts, am I? I'm thinking the group's thoughts.
That is the most provocative implication of the whole theory. That your social identity, when it's activated, often shapes your behavior more than your personality does.
Wow. Say more about that.
Well, you could take a person whose personality tests show them to be highly agreeable, non-confrontational, a declared pacifist even. But if you put them in a context where a violent group identity is activated, and it's a group they care about deeply, maybe their country is invaded, they might do things that their personality would never, ever allow. The group script can override the individual trait.
So character isn't a solid rock.
It's more like a liquid that takes the shape of whatever container it's currently in.
That is heavy. And it brings us to the next logical question. If we are taking the shape of the container, what is it that holds that shape together? That brings us to conformity.
Exactly.
So section 2, the logic of conformity. Now, we usually talk about conformity like it's a weakness. Don't be a sheep. Think for yourself. We celebrate the rebels, the nonconformists.
We do. Our entire culture is built around the myth of the lone genius, the person who breaks the rules. We teach kids to resist peer pressure.
Yeah.
But Abrams and Hogg completely flip this on its head. They argue that conformity isn't just about being afraid of being left out. It's not just cowardice or lack of imagination.
So what is it?
At its core, it's an act of loyalty.
Loyalty. That sounds way too positive for something like conformity.
Think about it through the identity lens we've been using. If your identity, your very sense of self, is tied to being a member of this group, Let's say it's a strict religious community, or an elite military unit, or even just a tight-knit group of punks from the 80s, then the norms of that group aren't just arbitrary rules.
They're more than that.
They are the very definition of who you are. They are the boundary markers that separate us from them.
So if I don't conform, I'm not just breaking a rule.
You are threatening the integrity of the group, you're blurring the boundary, and more importantly, you're dissolving your own identity.
I'm becoming not us.
Exactly. Norms are identity-based. They define what it means to be a member. We are the people who wear black leather. We are the people who wake up at 4 a.m. to train. We are the people who value X and despise Y. If I follow that norm, I am signaling to everyone, and just as importantly to myself, I belong here. I am one of you. Conformity is an act of psychological loyalty.
That actually explains why breaking a norm feels so physically awful. Like, if you're the one person who shows up to a black tie wedding in shorts and a t-shirt,
Yeah.
it's not just that you made a mistake. You feel this deep, burning sense of shame. You feel like an alien.
Yes. And the book discusses why these norms feel morally binding. There's a huge difference between breaking an external rule, like a speed limit, and breaking an internal group norm.
How so?
If no one is looking, you'll probably speed. The rule is external, the enforcement is external. But if the norm is internal, if it's part of your identity breaking, it feels like betraying yourself, even if no one ever finds out.
Because in that moment, myself is the group.
Precisely. If we are the honest people is a core part of my group's identity, then me telling a lie isn't just a simple lie. It creates an identity crisis. It's a betrayal of the self.
And this is why social pressure is so incredibly effective when it targets identity, not just behavior.
It's the most powerful tool there is.
Let's dig into that.
Yeah.
How does social pressure specifically target identity? Because I think we've all felt it, but maybe we haven't recognized the exact mechanism at play.
Okay, well, imagine a manager trying to get a team to work late on a Friday. One way is to use a simple transaction, I'll pay you overtime. That's a logical, interest-based appeal.
Right? It's clean.
But a much more powerful and frankly more manipulative way is to appeal to identity. The manager gathers the team and says, look, we are the kind of team that does whatever it takes to win. We aren't 9-to-5 clock punchers like the guys down the street. We are elite.
Ooh, I feel that. That's dirty. It really is.
It's so dirty. Because now the choice to stay late is no longer about the money or the work.
It's about who you are.
It's a loyalty test. If you pack up and go home at 5:00 p.m., you aren't just making a rational labor choice. You are tacitly admitting that you aren't elite. You aren't truly one of us. The pressure doesn't come from the boss. It comes from your own internal desire to maintain that positive self-concept.
That is fascinating. It explains so much about corporate culture. All those slogans on the wall, we work hard, play hard, move fast, and break things.
They're identity statements.
They're a trap to get you to conform to behaviors that might actually be bad for you personally, like overwork and burnout.
It's the mechanism of cults, too, at its most extreme. But it's also the mechanism behind highly effective, life-saving teams, like firefighters or surgeons. The mechanism itself is value neutral. The outcome depends entirely on what the group's norm actually is.
Okay, so we've established that we have this us. We categorize ourselves. We depersonalize to fit the group prototype, and we conform to show loyalty to that identity.
Right.
But you can't have an us without a them.
No, you cannot. The line that defines us also, by definition, excludes them.
And this is where the book really gets into the darker side of human nature. Intergroup relations and bias. Section 3.
Yeah, this is where it gets uncomfortable again.
I always assumed that for me to be biased against another group, to really dislike them, there had to be a reason, a real reason. You know, history, conflict, competition, they stole our land, or they believe in a different god, or they support the rival team.
You would think so. Common sense says that hatred requires a cause, but Abrams and Hogg present evidence that is, quite frankly, deeply disturbing.
What's the evidence?
They show that you don't need history, you don't need war, you don't even need to know the people in the other group. In fact, you don't even need a real group.
I remember reading about this, the famous minimal group paradigm experiments.
Yes. This is one of the most famous and replicated sets of experiments in the history of social psychology, originally conducted by Henri Tacheville, who was a mentor to these authors. The book analyzes it in incredible depth.
Walk us through it. Just how minimal is minimal?
It is absurdly, ridiculously minimal. Researchers bring a bunch of people into a lab. They're all total strangers to each other. They show them a screen with a bunch of dots on it for just a second, and then they ask them to estimate how many dots there were.
I have estimation task.
Okay. Then the experimenter collects their answers and comes back and arbitrarily, randomly tells half the room you are overestimators and the other half you are underestimators.
That's it. No ideology, no shared history, no sacred texts, just dots.
Just dots. In another famous version, they showed participants paintings by the artists Klee and Kandinsky and then split them into groups based on which one they said they preferred. There's no contact between the groups, no talking. You just know that you are in the Klee group or you are an overestimator. It's a meaningless label.
Okay, so I'm an overestimator. I'm proud of my dot estimating skills. What happens next?
Next, they take you to a private cubicle and give you a task. You have the chance to distribute rewards, usually small amounts of money, or points to other anonymous participants. You don't know who they are, you just see a code. Participant #34, member of the overestimators, and participant #12, member of the underestimators.
And let me guess, even with this completely meaningless group, I give more money to my guys, the other overestimators.
Instantly, consistently, and almost universally. The moment a line is drawn, no matter how arbitrary, people start favoring their in-group. It's called in-group favoritism.
Okay, that's interesting, but maybe not world-shattering. People like people who are like them.
But here's the part that really blows your mind. The researchers set up the experiment to test how you favor your group. They wanted to know what the motivation was.
Look.
They gave participants a choice matrix. Let's say you have two options. Option A. You can give your in-group member 25 points and the out-group member 21 points.
So both groups do pretty well, but my group does slightly better.
Right. Total pod is 46 points. Now, option B, you can give your in-group member 17 points and the out-group member gets only 1 point.
Wait, in option A, my group gets 25. In option B, my group only gets 17. So a rational, self-interested person always takes option A. I want the most points for my team.
You would think that would be the logical choice if your goal is to maximize your own group's outcome. But a huge number of people choose option B.
They choose to give their own team less money.
Yes.
Just to screw over the other guy more.
They choose less absolute gain for themselves in order to maximize the relative difference between us and them.
Wow.
The book calls this the drive for positive distinctiveness. The goal isn't just to be good. The goal is to be better than the others. We are willing to sacrifice our own absolute gain for relative status. Our self-esteem is derived not just from being in a good group, but from being in a group that is demonstrably superior to the other group.
That explains so much about politics, it's not even funny.
It does, doesn't it? It's a chilling finding.
It explains why people will vote for policies that might hurt them economically.
Yeah.
I don't care if my taxes go up a little, as long as those people's taxes go up even more.
Exactly. Because the money is just a resource and interest, but the team is the identity. If the status gap between us and them shrinks, my social identity feels threatened. I need my group to be superior to feel good about myself.
That is incredibly bleak. It means bias isn't a moral failing we learn. It's an automatic structural feature of how the human brain processes the world.
It suggests that bias is the default setting. We categorize, we differentiate. And as soon as we differentiate, we discriminate. It requires active, conscious effort to override that impulse.
So that's what happens when there's literally nothing at stake, just points in a lab based on dots. What happens when we add real-world stakes, like competition for actual resources?
That's when the engine goes into overdrive. When you introduce competition for status, for power, for limited resources like land or jobs or water, that natural automatic in-group bias turns into active hostility and out-group derogation.
And the book makes a really important distinction here between what it calls interest-driven conflict and identity-driven conflict. Can we break that down?
Sure. An interest-driven conflict is rational. We both want this apple. It's the last apple. Let's fight for it. If we can figure out a way to split the apple, or one of us finds another apple, the conflict ends. It's about the resource.
Right. It's negotiable.
But an identity-driven conflict is completely different. The goal is not, I want the apple. The goal is, I want to defeat you because you are them, and your existence threatens my group's status and identity. In this scenario, the apple is just an excuse for the conflict.
And in that kind of conflict, compromise is seen as dangerous.
It's seen as treason. Because if I compromise with you, if I agree to split the apple, I am blurring the sacred line between us and them. If I shake your hand, I am making us seem equal, and I am reducing my group's positive distinctiveness.
So peace could feel like an identity loss.
For people whose identity is deeply invested in the conflict, peace feels like a loss of self. It's a terrifying thought. It helps explain why some conflicts persist for generations, long after the original dispute over resources or land has become irrelevant. The conflict itself becomes the identity. We are the people who fight those people. If we stop fighting, who are we?
And this all circles back to depersonalization, doesn't it? Because when we are locked in this kind of identity-driven conflict, we stop seeing the enemy as human.
Yes, absolutely. When the US versus them mindset is fully activated, we depersonalize the outgroup completely. We strip them of their individuality. We don't see fathers who love their kids or people who worry about the future. We see the enemy. We see a cardboard cutout, a symbol.
You see this on social media every single day. People don't argue with Bob from Ohio who has a different opinion on tax policy. They argue with the liberal agenda or the MAGA cult. They're arguing with a prototype.
And because they are arguing with a prototype, they assume that person believes everything the prototype is supposed to believe. We exaggerate the differences between groups, and we minimize the differences within groups. We start to believe they are all alike, and they are all extreme.
I have to pause here because this is tainting a pretty robotic and, frankly, depressing picture of humans.
Right.
We automatically group up, we instinctively conform, we hate outsiders for no reason, and we do it all unconsciously. Is there any hope here? Or are we just doomed to endless tribal warfare?
There is hope, but the hope requires understanding the mechanism first. You can't fix an engine if you don't know how it works. And interestingly, understanding this mechanism of identity is also the key to understanding a huge piece of the puzzle: leadership.
Section 4, leadership and influence. And I feel like the traditional view of a leader, the great man theory of history, is that the leader is the smartest, strongest, most dominant person in the room, the alpha.
Right. The person who stands above the crowd, who is exceptional and different.
But Abrams and Hogg come along and say, not so fast.
They argue that is a complete misunderstanding of how social influence actually works in most situations. They argue that true, lasting influence doesn't come from being distinct from the group. It comes from being the most representative of the group.
The most representative. So the leader should be average.
Not average in the sense of being mediocre, but average in the sense of embodying the central tendencies, the core norms and values of the group absolutely perfectly. The leader must be the prototypical member.
They have to be the ultimate one of us.
Exactly. Influence comes from identity alignment, not from brute force. If a leader is seen as too distinct, maybe they are too smart or too wealthy, or they dress too differently, or their accent is wrong, they risk being categorized by the group as outgroup.
And once the group sees the leader as not one of us,
their influence collapses. You can't lead a group you don't truly belong to, psychologically.
This makes so much sense when you look at modern politics. You see these politicians who are, Ivy League educated, multimillionaires, living in gated communities, absolute elites. But when they go on the campaign trail, what do?
They take off the tie, they roll up the sleeves of their ridiculously expensive shirt.
They go to the county fair and eat a corn dog on a stick. They try to talk with a folksy accent that they definitely don't use in the boardroom. It always looks a little cringy, but now I understand they are doing it for a very specific psychological reason.
They are frantically trying to manage their prototypicality. They know that their wealth and education make them seem outgroup to the voters they need, so they have to overcompensate with these symbolic gestures to prove, no, really, I am just like you, I am one of you.
Because if we believe they are just like us, we trust them.
We trust them, and even more importantly, we want to follow them. This is what the book calls referent power. If I identify with you as my leader, then following your direction isn't submission. It's not me bowing to your will.
What is it then?
It's self-expression. By doing what you say, I am being a better, more authentic version of us. Your goals become my goals.
That is a complete game changer for anyone listening who manages a team or runs a company. You can't just rely on your title. You can't just say, I'm the boss, so do what I say.
A title gives you formal authority, but it doesn't give you influence. To have real influence, you have to live and breathe the norms you're trying to enforce. You have to be the super spreader of the group's identity. If you want the team to be innovative, you have to be the most curious person in the room. If you want them to be honest, you have to be radically, painfully honest yourself. You must be the prototype.
But there's a flip side to this, isn't there? The book talks about leaders as entrepreneurs of identity, which I love as a phrase, but it also sounds a little Manipulative.
It can be. It absolutely can be. The phrase suggests that leaders aren't just passive reflections of the group's existing identity. Great leaders, and also terrible leaders, actively shape that identity. They are storytellers. They tell the group the story of who we are.
So they get to define what the prototype is.
Yes. They have the power to shift the norms. And this is where the ethics become absolutely critical. A leader has the power to define us in a way that is inclusive and constructive. They can say, we are the people who value diversity of thought, who welcome newcomers, who innovate, and who treat each other with kindness.
Oh.
Or they can define us in opposition to a threatening them. They can say, we are the good, pure, hardworking people who are under constant attack by those people over there.
So a demagogue uses this natural us versus them mechanism to cement their own power.
It is the oldest and most effective trick in the political playbook. If you want to solidify your leadership and increase your group's cohesion, create an external threat, or just point to one. If the group feels threatened by an outgroup, they will cling tighter to their identity, and therefore they will cling tighter to the most prototypical member, the leader.
And they'll tolerate more from that leader.
They will tolerate more authoritarianism, more mistakes, more corruption, as long as that leader is seen as the one who is protecting the group's identity from the enemy.
That explains the last decade of news cycles across the globe.
It does. It explains why polarization can be so politically profitable for certain types of leaders. If you can keep your group feeling angry and threatened, they will never, ever leave you.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground here. The architecture of identity, the logic of conformity, the automatic bias of the minimal group, and the power of the prototypical leader.
It's a lot.
It is. So now, I want to zoom out. Section 5. Applications and limitations. Because we promised the listener at the top that we look at the so what? Why is this dense academic theory matter in the real world?
Right. The practical application.
We've obviously touched on politics and corporate culture a lot. Where else does this apply?
I mean, where doesn't it? It applies everywhere humans gather in groups. Think about social movements. How do you get millions of people to take to the streets for a cause?
It's not just about facts and figures.
Never. You can't just give them a PowerPoint presentation about climate change. You have to make the cause a core part of their social identity. I am a feminist. I am an environmentalist. I am an activist. If it's just an opinion I hold, I'll sign an online petition and stay home. If it's who I am, I'll march in the rain.
Marketing is huge here too, right? It feels like the entire industry is built on this.
Massive. Brands aren't selling products anymore. They are selling identities. They're selling membership in a tribe. When you buy a Mac, you aren't just buying a computer. You are buying membership in the creative class.
And when you buy a rugged pickup truck, you'll only ever drive to the grocery store.
You are buying membership in the tough, self-reliant, authentic group. Brands are identity badges. I'm a Nike person. I'm a Ford guy. I'm an Apple person.
You are buying the badge and the script that comes with it.
Exactly.
What about something like education? I feel like this has huge implications for schools and teachers.
It's absolutely critical. Think about a student who comes from a family or a neighborhood where the identity is school is not for us. Maybe it's seen as elitist or as acting white or just as a system that's not designed for them.
Okay.
If the social identity of good student directly conflicts with their primary social identity, they will disengage from school.
And not because they aren't smart or capable.
Not at all, but because being a good student would feel like being a traitor to their group. If succeeding at school means failing at being one of the boys or true to my neighborhood, they will almost always choose the group. So the challenge for great teachers is to find ways to make the identity of learner or scholar compatible with the student's other important identities.
That is a huge insight. Now, we should be fair and do a balanced critique here. We've been hyping this book and this theory a lot. But what are the limitations? What does it get wrong or miss?
Well, as we've mentioned, it's dense, it's highly academic, very abstract, but I think the main critique you hear of social identity theory and self-categorization theory is that it can feel a bit deterministic.
Like we're just robots being programmed by our groups.
It can feel that way sometimes. It focuses so heavily on the power of the group mechanism that it sometimes underplays the role of individual agency. There are people who stand up to their groups, there are whistleblowers, there are nonconformists who refuse to depersonalize and follow the script.
Rosa Parks, the lone protester in Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
People who hide their neighbors during a genocide.
Exactly. The theory is brilliant at explaining why the rest of the crowd stays silent or goes along. It has a much harder time explaining the one person who speaks up. It explains the power of the current, but it doesn't always explain how a single person can learn to swim upstream against it.
So it's a map of the trap, but it's not necessarily the key to the exit.
That's a great way to put it. But you can't even begin to look for the exit if you don't realize you're in a trap in the first place.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap this up with our outro. We have been on quite a journey through the collective human mind today.
We have indeed.
If we had to distill all of this down to the absolute key takeaways for our listener, the learner, what would they be? 4 big points.
Okay. First, I would say, realize that your identity is not a fixed object. It's a fluid process. You are a different person in the boardroom than you are at the bar with your friends, and that's not a moral failing. It's just how social identity works.
You are many people. You contain multitudes.
You contain many social identities. Second, understand that norms are fundamentally about loyalty. When you see someone doing something that seems irrational just to fit in, try not to judge them as stupid or weak. Understand that they are performing a powerful act of signaling safety and belonging to their tribe.
Okay.
Third, bias is automatic. It is the brain's default setting. The moment you draw a line between us and them, even if it's over something as silly as dots on a screen, your brain wants to discriminate. You have to actively and consciously work to override that initial impulse.
And finally, leadership.
True influence comes from representing the group, not from standing above it. If you want to lead, you have to be seen as the most authentic one of us before you can ever tell us what to do.
So, last question. Why does this all matter to the person listening right now? Maybe they're driving to work, maybe they're at the gym, walking the dog. What's the so what for them?
It matters because this knowledge gives you a form of X-ray vision. Once you understand these mechanics, you can spot them happening in real time. You can see when a politician is trying to manipulate your identity by creating a fake threat. You can see when your workplace is creating a toxic in-group culture.
And maybe, most importantly, you can catch yourself doing it.
That's the most powerful part. You can catch yourself when you feel that sudden, hot spike of anger at them. You can pause for just a second and ask yourself, is this me thinking? Or is this my group identity thinking for me?
And that moment of awareness is the first step to getting some of that individual agency back.
It is. It's the beginning of wisdom.
I want to leave you with a final thought today, a final question. I want to go back to that onion we started with.
Let's hear it.
We spent the last hour talking about how group membership can override personal beliefs. We've talked about how our sense of self literally changes based on who we are in the room with. So here is the question to take with you. If you could actually strip away all of your group memberships, if you were no longer a citizen of your country, a member of your profession, a supporter of your political party, a fan of your team, or even a child of your parents, who'll be left standing there? Is there a you underneath it all? Or are we, in the end, just the sum of our tribes?
That is a haunting question to end on.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.